been saying it for a while now. One of the most important aspects of the Trump presidency has been how he has been remaking our courts. And it's something that you will get a good bit of ire from a lot of Democrats and things like that. But it hasn't gotten the media coverage that a lot of elements of Trump's presidency have gotten. But I think to this point, he has appointed, I believe, more than 200 or almost 200 judges to federal courts. And that is a very, very big deal. Because we've seen our judicial system come to almost usurp power from the other branches, especially the legislative branch, where they have almost been crafting law from the bench, basically by overriding anything that they deem ideologically outside of their purview. Most of these people are appointed either by Democrats or rhinos. I think some of the worst judges that we have were appointed during the George Bush administration. Bush was a neoconservative, which essentially means he was a liberal who was just a war hawk. So we're seeing, though, the benefits of Trump reworking and restructuring the court systems as the Ninth Circuit has ended the California ban on high-capacity magazines. Yes, that is the Ninth Circuit, which if you guys are familiar with the different circuits in the U.S., the Ninth Circuit has been the most reliably leftist appellate court in our nation. So to see that the Ninth Circuit is overruling the California high-capacity magazine ban is a huge show that the work Trump has been doing in the court system is paying off. So let's go ahead and get into this article from the Associated Press. A 3-judge panel of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals on Friday threw out California's ban on high-capacity ammunition magazines, saying that the law violates the U.S. Constitution's protection of the right to bear firearms. Yes, it does. Even well-intentioned laws must pass constitutional muster, Appellate Judge Kenneth Lee wrote for the panel's majority. Yes, that is... You cannot just say, we feel like we will be safer if we ban any magazine with more than 10 rounds, and that means we have the right to do it. No, because it doesn't pass constitutional muster. The Second Amendment is very, very clearly stated. The right to bear arms shall not be infringed. And I've talked before, a lot of people will argue about the militia clause of the Second Amendment. What is it? A well-regulated militia being necessary for a free society. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I believe I mixed a word or two up there. But in general, the point is that you have a lot of people that think that the clause referencing militias is a sort of limiter. It's a limiting governor on our right to bear arms. That only, do they mean only militias have the right to bear arms? No, not at all. Because the way that the syntax, the way that this sentence is structured, the necessity of a well-regulated militia is a qualifier. It qualifies why the right to bear arms shall not be infringed. I mean, you could take that out and you could say, because cheesecake is great, the right to bear arms shall not be infringed. It's, it doesn't have anything to do with limiting the amendment. Or limiting the Second Amendment. It talks about why the Second Amendment is so important and why the right to bear arms shall not be infringed. But I mean, you'll see the mental gymnastics and the rhetorical gymnastics that the people on the left will do to try to take our guns away or limit our access to guns. And it's good to see that even in an area that was so reliably leftist, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, they are overruling this and they're going towards constitutional originalism, which is what we want. We want originalists. It's not about liberals, leftists, conservatives, right-wingers. It's not about that. It is about originalists. Having people who are going to read the Constitution under the framework that it was written upon. And they're going to rule accordingly. It's not a living document that changes with the times. No. A Constitution is a foundation. It is the foundation that you build your nation upon. The foundation isn't supposed to adjust with the nation. Otherwise, the foundation cracks and the building falls apart. You don't change the foundation. It is set in stone. I mean, it is the stone that the nation is built upon. So, he noted that California passed the law in the wake of heart-wrenching and highly publicized mass shootings, but said that isn't enough to justify a ban whose scope is so sweeping that half of all magazines in America are now unlawful to own in California. Yes. And they love to draw on people's emotions when it comes to the gun issue. They always talk about the kids. That's why after Parkland, they put a bunch of high school kids up in front of the podium and had them preach about why guns need to be taken away. These kids obviously don't have the understanding of our nation's history and of the issues of why guns are so important. That same gun that was used to mow down however many kids in Parkland, a tragedy as it was, could have just been easily used to stop somebody from breaking into their house and committing any other kind of heinous acts. We know that through the CDC study that there are between 500,000 to 2.5 million defensive gun uses in this nation every single year. That means there's 500,000 to 2.5 million less victims of criminals in this country every single year because they had access to guns. So it's very easy to present one side of the argument, but when you present both sides, the argument for allowing people to have guns and not regulating them is much, much greater, both statistically and even from an emotional standpoint. If you start getting into the stories of people who, my ex-boyfriend started stalking me and I felt like I had to get a gun, but because I'm in California where you have to wait 10 days to get a gun, I wasn't able to get mine, and after 3 days of waiting, he came and killed me. You just need to let people have their constitutional rights, and sure, it's going to come at a cost. But it also comes at a cost if you take them away, especially when it's something that has to do with people having the ability to defend themselves. California Attorney General Xavier Becerra's office said it was reviewing the decision, and he remains committed to using every tool possible to defend California's gun and safety laws and keep our communities safe. Again, this is what the left always does. They always speak in overarching terms, but they will never get specific about what they mean. How is it going to keep your community safe if you limit people's capacities? So let's say you're at home and you've got four gang members or whatever come to break into your home, and you're limited to 10 rounds. We heard Joe Biden recently say you don't need 30 rounds to defend yourself. Just get yourself a double-barrel shotgun. Well, what if you're by yourself and you're going up against 4 people that are trying to break into your house? Do you have any idea how difficult it is to actually, you got your adrenaline pumping and you're trying to keep everything straight. You got so many thoughts running around your head. You're in fight or flight mode and you have to defend yourself. You're talking about 2.5 shots for every single person breaking into your house if you got 4 people coming in to get you. That's not a whole lot, especially if we're talking about pistols. I mean, pistols are not that accurate, so unless somebody is very well trained and is a good shot, there's a very good chance that with 10 rounds, they're not going to do a whole lot of damage against 4 people. And that's what all the people who craft these gun laws that try to restrict gun ownership or try to limit our capacity to wield weapons, they don't understand how these things work. They're mostly people that have never touched a gun in their life, have mostly been afraid of guns, or they've hired people who have guns. They have personal security that carries guns and protects them, and they don't have to touch them themselves. And that's a very, rules for thee but not for me type scenario. All right. So, it says gun owners cannot immediately rush out to buy high-capacity magazines as a stay has been issued by the lower court, because a stay issued by the lower court judge remains in place. Well, let's hope this gets cleared up soon, because I think this was a good ruling that this was unconstitutional. I think just about all gun laws are unconstitutional. I think we should be able to have fully automatic weapons. I do. First of all, that's one thing that a lot of people don't realize with fully automatic weapons is the lack of accuracy that you have with them. So if you had somebody that goes in with, say, an AR-15, a semi-automatic rifle, and they've got a 30-round capacity, they can easily just aim, shoot, and each shot is accurate. But if you're talking about an automatic weapon, which most of these kids would probably, if they had an automatic weapon, they'd go in there and just spray and pray, you know? But what's going to happen is the second that thing the gun's going up like this, the next thing you know, all the bullets are going over everybody's heads. So there is even an argument that a fully automatic weapon in the hands of a mass shooter, especially an unskilled one, like you see at like school shootings and things like that, you're going to cause less death with a fully automatic than you would a semi-automatic. But Becerra did not say if he would seek a further delay of Friday's ruling to prevent an immediate buying spree if the lower court judge ends that restriction. I think he's probably going to try to seek a further delay. I mean, these people in California are nuts about... If it was up to them, we wouldn't have any guns at all. Gun groups estimated that more than 1 million high-capacity ammunition magazines may have legally flooded into California during a 1-week window before the judge stayed his ruling 3 years ago. Oh, man. Wish I had known about that. Should have been keeping up better. Becerra also did not say if he would ask a larger 11-judge appellate panel to reconsider the ruling by the 3 judges, or if he would appeal the U.S. Supreme Court. So that's essentially talking about like an en banc ruling that we're seeing in the Michael Flynn case right now. I don't want to go down a whole tangent, but where a 3-judge panel ruled on his side, and Judge Sullivan said, "Oh no, we're going to get everybody in here," because he knew he could find a lot more allies in the larger Washington court district if he did an en banc ruling that had, I think, 11-judge panel. So, Governor Gavin Newsom, who championed the magazine ban when he was lieutenant governor, defended the law as a vital gun violence prevention measure. Of course, Gavin Newsom defended the law. I think it was sound. I think it was right. And the overwhelming majority of Californians agree when they supported a ballot initiative that we put forth, he said Friday. Well, that is why we are not a direct democracy. A direct democracy is 2 wolves and a sheep deciding what's for dinner. So the majority of Californians do not get to tell the minority of Californians how they get to defend themselves, especially when the Constitution grants them a no infringement clause on their ability to protect themselves and bear arms to do so. California Rifle and Pistol Association attorney Chuck Michel called Friday's decision a huge victory for gun owners and the right to choose to own a firearm to defend your family, while a group that favors firearm restrictions called it dangerous and expects it will be overturned. These people who call it dangerous probably do not understand how a gun works. It does not take a whole lot of time to drop out one magazine and pop another one in there. It's a pretty quick... Sure, it might give you like a second if it's somebody who's not very well trained. But people who are well trained can drop as they're pressing the button to drop a magazine and that one's falling out, have another one popped in, cocked, ready to go. It doesn't take very long. So all it means is that people have to stock up on low capacity magazines. These people just don't understand guns. The ruling has national implications because other states have similar restrictions, though it immediately applies only to Western states under the appeals court's jurisdiction. Gun rights groups have been trying to get such cases before the nation's high court that it has now that it has a more conservative majority. Unfortunately, even with our more conservative majority, Brett Kavanaugh and Neil Gorsuch has been a bit of a disappointment too in some of his rulings. But between Kavanaugh and Gorsuch, we haven't gotten quite the originalism that we were hoping for. And we weren't really expecting it from Kavanaugh. We all knew that Kavanaugh was a little bit on the squishy side. But they have still been declining court cases revolving gun rights. And that is... It's not good. It's disappointing. I mean, if we can get 1 or 2 more people on the Supreme Court and we can start getting these in there and they start ruling that a lot of things are unconstitutional, like the 1934 National Firearms Act, let's get rid of that. We should be able to have silencers. We should be able to have fully automatics. We should be able to have whatever. Whatever. That is the purpose of the Second Amendment. However, the Supreme Court's majority in June declined to consider several challenges to federal and state gun control laws, exactly what I was saying, including Massachusetts' ban on large-capacity magazines. And who decides what a large-capacity magazine is? I mean, in California, that means a 10 magazine, a 10-round limit to your magazines. Well, why couldn't they decide that 5 rounds is high capacity? I mean, it's more than a single bolt action rifle, isn't it? Why 10? And why is 30 high capacity? I mean, you can get yourself a 100-round drum, right? Why's the line drawn before 30? 30 is pretty standard for a rifle, for an AR-15 style rifle. Let's see. However, the Supreme Court's majority in June. Aside from the magazine ban itself, Michelle said the unaffiliated Second Amendment Foundation said the case has legal implication for other gun restrictions should it reach the justices before it could allow the court to clarify an obscure legal debate over what standard of review should be used. The Supreme Court seems inclined to do away with the complicated subjective tests that many courts have wrongly applied in Second Amendment cases. Yes, you cannot have that level of subjectivity in trying to interpret what is a very, very clear sentence. The right to bear arms shall not be infringed. What you're doing is you're throwing that out the window and saying, I still believe I'm right and the Constitution's wrong, so I'm going to rule over it, and because I have the black robe, I get to say. No. There has to be some sort of checks and balances on the judiciary's power. They shouldn't have the ability. I mean, there's got to be somewhere where that can go back to the legislation. But it's the activism on the courts that is not good. And we don't want activism on the right either. We just want originalism. We want constitutional originalism. That is not activism. That is being true to the founding. That is being true to our foundational principles of a country, as a country. All right. Let's see. The Supreme Court declined to do away with the complicated subjective tests that many courts have applied to Second Amendment cases in favor of a clear, more objective, originalist approach that considers the text, history, and tradition of a law to determine what infringements might be tolerated. I don't even really appreciate that he qualifies that within the context of determining what infringements might be tolerated. The answer to that should be none. You cannot give these people an inch or they will take a mile. Don't give up anything. The law is the law. Shall not be infringed. I have the right to have this. It's the supreme law of the land, and it supersedes the California state law. There. Ruling done. It should be that simple. Friday's ruling was a fractured decision, partly because of that issue. 2 of the 3 judges voted to toss out the state's ban, while the 3rd judge dissented. U.S. District Judge Barbara Lynn of Texas, who had been named the 3rd judge on the Appellate panel, said that the majority's ruling conflicts with decisions in 6 other federal appellate courts across the nation and with a 2015 ruling by a different panel of the Ninth Circuit itself. She said she would have upheld California's law based on that precedent. And what she's talking about right there is following stare decisis. Stare decisis, which I'm not a big fan of, it implies that you need to defer to the wisdom of previous judges. There are a lot of very, very bad laws in American history, especially if you start talking about the Jim Crow era, that were upheld, that through stare decisis would have remained upheld. But because we realized that they were unconstitutional, in an originalist sense, they were overturned. So we can't... I don't like judges that rely heavily on stare decisis. I mean, it's not one of those all or nothing type things. Of course, sometimes it might be appropriate to defer to a previous ruling if that previous ruling was sound. But if it's not a sound ruling, then it should be overruled. You can't cement the legacy of independent judges based on their violation of our constitutional rights. That's not how we should be cementing their legacies. Opponents argued unsuccessfully that larger capacity magazines are not needed for self-protection. Yes, they are. Here's the thing. You do not know what the situation for self-protection is going to be. You cannot predict that. You're just saying in most cases you likely won't, therefore you never will. That is not the purpose of the Second Amendment. The purpose of the Second Amendment is so that you can defend yourself no matter the situation you find yourself in. So it's not for anyone else to decide for you how many rounds you're going to need. The Second Amendment does not empower private citizens to arm themselves with weapons of war. Actually, yes it does. It absolutely does. The Second Amendment does empower private citizens to arm themselves with weapons of war. That is, if you look at some of the letters from the founding fathers, there was a merchant ship that wrote a letter to, I believe it was James Madison, might have been John Adams. I always get those two mixed up. I don't know why, but I believe it was James Madison, asking if he could have cannons on his merchant ships. Now, at that time, cannons were the equivalents of tanks. And the response from James Madison, or John Adams, I forget which one, sorry, was that yes, you have every right to have that tank. So, or that cannon, not that tank, but even a tank. We have a right to own tanks. We should have a right to own tanks. If somebody has the ability to buy a B-52 bomber, hell, let them buy a B-52 bomber. We're allowed to have weapons. We're allowed to be armed. We're allowed to have machinery that can go up against a tyrannical force. And a tyrannical force is the only thing out of its fear that would try to prevent you from having enough weapons to fight a tyrannical force. So, the Second Amendment does not empower weapons of war. And first of all, he doesn't even know what a weapon of war is. He's talking about AR-15, like an AR-15 with a 30-round magazine. That is not a weapon of war. No military would use an AR-15 as their primary weapon. It's not a powerful enough gun. It's a .223. I mean, it's basically a .22 caliber gun. It's not nearly as lethal, or I don't want to say it's not nearly as lethal. What gives the AR-15 its power is its velocity, which can also save people. If you have a little .22 pointed slug, and it's going at 300 feet per second, if it hits somebody, you got a much better shot of it going in and out, and you not having a bullet lodged in you, which gives you a much higher survival rate. Now, of course, it depends on where you're shot. All of these things, there's 1,000 different variables at play. But having a higher velocity does not necessarily make it a deadlier weapon. Now, you might be able to shoot through a wall and still hit somebody. So in some cases it does, in some cases it doesn't. But these people don't understand guns well enough to understand these different situations, these different scenarios, and how different guns play differently in each one. Friday's decision upholds a 2017 ruling by San Diego-based U.S. District Judge Roger Benitez, who blocked a new law that would have barred gun owners from possessing magazines holding more than 10 bullets. Good on him for blocking that law. But he and the appeals court went further by declaring unconstitutional a state law that prohibited buying or selling such magazines since 2000. That law had let those who had magazines before then keep them, but also barred new sales or imports. Well, all in all, I think this is a good ruling. I mean, it's obviously a good ruling. I hope it is upheld. I hope that they don't try to, pull some California bullshit with this, because I'm ready to get some 30-round magazines up in this motherfucker. Let's also hope that, before long, they do away with a lot of the other California regulations, things with like the pistol grip. I don't know if you guys know what a featureless gun is. If you don't live in California, or I don't know where else has the whole featureless thing, maybe New York or something. You can't have a pistol grip that has a detachable magazine. So if you have a magazine that detaches from the bottom, you have to have your pistol with this little flat piece of plastic that you can't wrap your thumb around. So you have to hold your gun like this. It's really weird. Anyways, guys, I thought this was a cool story. I hope it's upheld. If you guys haven't yet, please subscribe, like the video, share this, let people know what's going on. Also, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Parler at Ram Thorburn. And if you are interested in contributing to the channel, there are links to my Subscribestar, Patreon, and PayPal down in the description below. Thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you all have a very wonderful day.